If you're building with Ruby on Rails, then you're probably familiar with Rails Scaffolds. They're pretty popular with more beginner level builders in Rails. But as you progress in your career as a builder in Ruby on Rails, you probably move away from the basic scaffolds generator and you develop your own design patterns and your own way of doing things, whether it's how you organize your controllers, how you build out models and resources and routes and migrations and all the rest of it. Well, I've developed my own design patterns and ways of building out new features in Rails, and that's what we've put together in the Instrumental Components Scaffolds Generator. It's like an upgraded version of the basic Scaffolds Generator, but it's what I like to call a compound component because it strings together a bunch of individual components that we use to design and build out features rapidly in Rails. So let me demonstrate how these pieces come together. We're going to start with a basic new Rails application. We'll call it Music Shop. And as always, I'm going to enable Tailwind CSS. And let's start up this app. All right, we'll cd into it. And we'll start the server. Make sure that we're up and running here. Hello, Rails. Okay, so let's start with just the basic Rails Scaffold Generator that we know and love. This is what it looks like in Ruby on Rails 8 with Tailwind installed. We're going to do Rails generate, or G, scaffold, and let's do a musical instrument like banjo. We're going to give it a name. That's a string. How about a number of strings? That'll be an integer. And the brand, that's also a string. Purchase date. How about a Boolean field? Like, is it on sale? So we'll do sale, Boolean. Okay, that's good for now. So let's go ahead and generate a banjo in our Music Shop application. So as you can see, the basic Rails scaffold did its thing. We've got model, we've got controller, views. I'm not going to go into it in detail. You can watch the basic Rails demo video from DHH on that. But let's just take a look at what we've got. So I'm going to look at I forgot to run the migration, of course. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so here we go. Basic index view. We can now click New Banjo, and we've got this kind of basic looking form. Call it banjo name. It's got, what do banjos have? 4 strings? I forgot, actually. I don't even know any makers of banjos. I'm a guitar player myself. So yeah, banjo company. We'll just leave the rest. Super basic scaffold in Rails, but this isn't ready for prime time. We would have to do a lot to design this out and get it ready for a real application. So now let's add our next resource. This time we'll do guitars, but we're going to use the Instrumental Scaffold Generator. Now, as a reminder in these videos, for the most up-to-date information and documentation, you'll want to check out the docs at instrumental.dev. That's also where you can get your copy of instrumental components and your installation instructions. This video is walking through how it currently works, which is probably pretty accurate, but there might be some details that are missing. So that's where you'll find it in the docs at instrumental.dev. Okay, so first I need to go to the gem file and make sure that we have instrumental components installed. So I can do that in the development group, since the instrumental gem is really just used for installing things while we're in local development. So I'm going to install my local version of the instrumental components. You're going to have your own instructions on installing instrumental components. You can get those at instrumental.dev. I'm going to bundle that. Okay, so now we're good to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and actually pull up the last command that we used to generate banjos, but I'm just going to tweak some things because I want to keep all the same column names. But first of all, this time we're going to generate a guitar resource instead of banjo. And instead of using the Rails scaffold, we're going to use the Instrumental Scaffold. So we'll still use Rails G or Rails generate, and then Instrumental : scaffold, and everything else will leave the same. So again, we're going to scaffold a new resource called guitar. It's going to create a table called guitars. We're going to have a name column. We're going to have a strings column, brand, purchase date, and a sale checkbox or Boolean. All right, let's go ahead and do that. Now, the Instrumental Scaffold Generator is going to have a bunch of options for us built in, and it's going to prompt us with some questions. So this is something that I like to do on a lot of new features in my apps is I give them a slug column. That way, instead of showing like the ID number in the URL, we'll show a slug, and that can be generated off of the name. So in this case, I'm going to say yes, and that's actually going to add a slug column to our resource. We also have the option to generate that slug from like the name of the resource. So for every guitar name, we can generate a unique slug off of that, or we can just generate like a random string as the slug. I like to generate it off the name of things. So we're going to do that. It's going to ask us which field are we generating it off of, and we're going to use the name field. The other thing that we have built into it is pagination using the Pagey gem. So it's going to ask us if we want to add pagination, and I almost always do. So I'm going to say yes. And because of the way that our layouts are designed, we want to define what is the actual name of the resource. In this case, its name. I could actually leave this blank. It's going to default to the column name, but I'll just type it in. It also detected that we have not yet installed any of the instrumental layouts that come with instrumental components. And so since that's the case, it's asking us if we want to install the instrumental minimal layout, which is a very minimal layout. Yes, we do want to install that. And it's also giving us the option to make that minimal layout the default application layout in our application. And that is what I want to do here. So I'm going to choose that option, and we're going to overwrite the application layout file. Okay, so that's all set, and it gave me a couple of reminders. Now, again, by the time that you're watching this might look a little bit different. You'll find all the details and instructions or your next steps at instrumental.dev. But for now, it'll probably look something like this. It's reminding me that we did just generate a new migration. We can see what that looks like right here. So we're going to need to run this. It's also reminding me to do bundle install because it did add the Pagey gem to the bottom of our gem file. So it detected that we don't yet have this gem, and it added it. So we're going to need to do bundle install, and we're going to need to run that migration. Okay. Now, another thing that I have to do quite often, especially when working with Tailwind CSS, is stop the server and run Rails assets clobber, Rails assets precompile. And that's going to make sure that all of the new Tailwind CSS classes and design styles that we've just installed into our project, they're going to take effect, and we're going to need to restart the server. Okay, so let's go back, and this time we're going to load guitars. Okay, so right off the bat, you see it looks a little bit different. Let's go ahead and create the new guitar. We're at the R in Strat. All right, so we've just created a new Stratocaster guitar, and it's got 6 strings. The brand is Fender. We've got a date field here. Let's say this one is on sale, and we can customize the slug if we want to, but we won't. All right, we just updated that. It took me to the show view, and we had a little flash message down here that faded away. We've got this sort of sub-navigation. We can go back to the edit view, and I can also go back to the index view, which looks a little bit more interesting. So let's start to just unpack what we're seeing on the screen, and then I'll go into the code and start to unpack everything. So here on the index view, we have a much better index layout. Of course, everything is mobile optimized. As always, everything is light mode and dark mode. And, we can customize all the colors in our Tailwind config, but out of the box, you get like a primary and secondary color and some grays and things like that. This is what we call the listing component. So this is the index view. And, for example, if I do another one, we'll do Les Paul, and I'll go back to the index view. By the way, I'm going to show the breadcrumbs thing in just a second, but this is the listing components, and I really like this component because it's a nicer way to show listings of resources. So it comes with a title. We can do an optional short description. We can even add an icon there. It also builds in a little drop down with a settings for each thing. And all this stuff is wired up and ready to go. Let's look at the edit view. So first of all, it also comes bundled with our sub navigation component, and that's this thing right here. This thing is pretty cool because if you go into a mobile layout and you drop down, that sub nav now turns into a little drop down. So it just becomes more compact when you're on mobile. Of course, the form also becomes more compact. And it has our form styling all built into it. These are different form field types that come bundled with Instrumental. As you can see, the checkbox has a bit of a different layout than the rest. Now, as I'm recording this, we're still in the process of designing all these things. They're actually going to be a bit nicer in the weeks that come up. We're going to be coming out with a better slug field that can show like a URL at the beginning or at the end. So that's all in the works. But right now it's pretty usable. All right, now let's take a look under the hood and see what we've got here. So let's go back to our routes. And as you can see, we have added guitars here. Let's take a look at the guitar model. Pretty basic, but we did add that slug to it. We've also added our generate slug using this concern. So we've also built in this slug generator concern. So this just popped right into your project, ready for you to use, and you can even continue to modify it if you want to. A couple different options here. You can generate a random slug, or you can generate a slug by a name and kind of pass it the name. In this case, like we're generating the slug. And just to show you what that looks like in the browser, as you can see, this guitar is named Stratocaster. So it actually named the slug in the URL Stratocaster, right? And you can customize that here as well, but it automatically detected it and generated it. There's also a system for making sure that it's unique. Let's take a look at the guitar's controller. So it's a pretty straightforward controller. It gives you all the basics that you need. In this case, we did install Pagey, so that's here, all ready to go. Now let's take a look at the views. So under here, under guitars, it generated a form for us, and this is using our forms component with our fields components for each field type, automatically built out and structured using all the options that we've built into it. We have all this stuff documented at instrumental.dev. Here's that listing partial. So each listing, so actually let me go back to the index view here. So we're rendering our listings component, which looks like this. We've got some Tailwind stuff built into that. And then inside that, we render each individual listing. And so here is the listing component. So in instrumental components, they all get installed inside shared components. And this is where you can find all these partials. For the most part, you probably don't want to customize these too much, but you can. They're all here for you to pick apart and customize to your liking. And so as you can see, we're showing a title, description, sub-description, and all these things are optional, right? And so you can pass these along. We can even pass along like an icon to show on the left side, or if it's like a user, we can pass along a user avatar, and we've got a component for that as well. Now, another thing that you may have noticed is when we create a new guitar, this is something I like to do in a lot of my features. The basic Rails generator will display the form and it'll show all the fields, whether you're creating a new record or you're editing the record. But I find that in most products that I build, when you're creating something new, you really just need to start with giving it a name, and then we create it, and then we can continue adding to it. I like that pattern a lot better, and that's what we do here. So if you look at our form here, by default, we're only showing the name field, but then only if it's not a new record, we're going to then output the rest of the fields in this model. Now, of course, the form partial and all these other views are now in the project, so you can customize and reconfigure this however you want. But in general, this is typically my go-to pattern for creating new features. Now, as I said, we're looking at the minimal layout. That came along with the scaffold generator here. But you know what? I think this needs something else. I think it needs like an actual sidebar and a top bar. And it would be good if we had some breadcrumbs to be able to navigate back to index and into the other pages. So let's go ahead and install one of the other layouts that comes with Instrumental, Rails Instrumental Layout. And let's do the collapsible sidebar layout. All right, so now this one, I do want to actually also make the application layout again. I'm going to overwrite that. And this one comes with a bunch of other layout partials to build it all out. We're going to go back and restart the server. I actually have a terminal shortcut to do the clobbering and pre-compiling of assets. I just do RR. And so that will do Rails assets clobber, Rails assets pre-compile, and then restart the server. So it just did that. Oh, you know what? When we started the new app, I forgot to set the root path. That's something that you always need to remember to do. Let's actually make it the guitars index. Okay, so we're all set there. Okay, and we should be able to see it here. Yeah. Okay, so here is our kind of built out layout. We've got a sidebar here with a main navigation. We can keep adding to this. And this is a collapsible sidebar. So it gave us sort of like a temporary logo with the name of the app all built into it. There's like a full version and an icon version. We've got this like minimal sidebar, and the browser is actually going to remember my setting on that. So that's pretty cool. We've got this top bar with breadcrumbs. We'll get into that in just a moment. Now, I have another video that walks through authentication, building in like registration flows and sign-up flows. And once you do that, Instrumental will automatically add like a user menu up here at the right. We haven't done that yet. That's something for a separate video. For now, we've got our basic guitars resource all scaffolded out. Let's go back into that first guitar that we made, and you can see now the breadcrumbs are coming into play. So now we're looking at the edit view, and we've got the breadcrumbs all set up here. Pretty cool. Now, one more thing. Let's go back to that very first resource that we had scaffolded out using the basic Rails generator. As you can see, it's still using the old basic views that came with the Rails Scaffold Generator. And it would take us a lot of work to kind of go in and reapply all the different layouts and partials and styling and all the rest of it. Well, with Instrumental, we can go back and apply our scaffolding to any existing resource. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to do Rails G Instrumental Scaffold Views. We're going to add views this time, and we're going to add the name of the existing resource that we want to apply this to. So we're going to do Banjo. We're going to hit that, and Banjo has a name. That's what defines its name field. Okay, so it's going to kind of run through a bunch of things and make sure that we have all the necessary components. Most of these are already installed, and it detected that, so it skips most of them. And now it's going to actually overwrite the views that the previous Rails scaffold had installed, and it's going to confirm that we want to do this. Yes, we do. The index, the show, the new, the edit, the form, and it's also going to sort of like reinstall our listings. Okay, so we are all set now. Let's go ahead and restart. We probably don't even need to do this time. It's just becoming muscle memory for me at this point. So now let's refresh, and now here we go. So the Banjo's resource is now upgraded, and it looks consistent with the way that we have guitars all set up. So here's our banjo name, and we can edit our banjo here. So something that happened sort of behind the scenes here is when we apply the views generator to an existing resource, Instrumental will actually find all of the existing columns for that resource, and it'll build out the form accordingly, applying all the right field types to each column type. So it's kind of smart that way. Of course, again, you can go right into these view files right here. They're all just HTML ERB. You can go in and you can customize them, but they're all installed, ready for you to have some fun with. So that is scaffolding out resources the basic way and the instrumental way in Ruby on Rails. Now, if you're building with Ruby on Rails and Ruby on Rails 8, then you'll want to make sure that you are up on the new authentication generator that comes with Ruby on Rails 8. I've got a video all about that. You can see how that works and install the Rails generator into your project. And then I have a video on the instrumental upgrade to the Rails 8 generator, which gives you a sign-up flow, a registration flow, and a whole bunch of other upgrades into the whole system to get it ready for prime time. I'll see you there.